and thank you for joining us in the salon. This evening in the UK, the clocks have changed, dark outside, and it's 8 p.m. in the UK, and thank you very much for joining us in the salon. I'm Adam Smith, I'm the Program Director for Dementia Researcher, and I'm delighted to be hosting this evening's session, which is all about being a great leader and mentor. Let me set the scene. I'm going to start by setting the scene. In most researchers' careers, I hope you would all agree, that a time comes when leadership becomes just as essential as scientific expertise, whether it's leading a grant application, running a lab, or guiding PhD students. The shift to leadership roles is almost inevitable. Yet, these are not always natural skills, and often training is required to develop them, or the training is scarce and overlooked. So leadership in research isn't just about individual achievements, it's about fostering an environment where everyone thrives and grows. And today we're here to discuss how we can redefine leadership in dementia research and explore how inclusive, collaborative leadership can make an extraordinary difference for teams and the future of the field. And to help me in doing this, I have two brilliant guest speakers who are going to join me this evening. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Dorothy C. and Dr. Russell Chander. Hi, both of you. Thanks very much for joining. I'm going to read their introductions now, and this is where I discover that I've completely got it wrong. So do jump in and correct me. Dorothy is a senior lecturer and neuroscientist and cognitive psychologist at Edge Hill University. And she specializes in neurobiology of learning and memory, early detection of dementia, and promoting brain health. And the best part, she tells us that the best part of her job is supporting the next generation of researchers, which I think makes her the perfect guest for this evening's salon session. Next we have, was that right, Dorothy?
Yeah.
I got that right. I got it completely wrong last week, so I'm keen to make sure I got it right.
Yeah.
Next, we have Dr. Russell Chander from the Center for Healthy Brain Aging, which is always abbreviated to CHIBA at the University of New South Wales, coming to us all the way from Australia, where I don't know what time is it, Russell?
It is 7 a.m. on the 7th, so hello from the future.
Thank you for coming in so early, and apologies for asking that question, because I bet you must get fed up with how many people say, "What time is it where you are?"
It's okay. It's part parcel of being here, so yeah, it's all good.
Well, thank you very much. His work focuses on social cognition in healthy aging and neurocognitive disorders, and how it might be influenced by genetics, hormones, and brain changes. Is that still right, Russell?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I do. That was part of my PhD thesis, and I also branch out into a lot of things in vascular dementia, subjective impairments, hearing impairments. I don't know what I'm doing.
Do you know what? Hearing is such a hot topic. Everything I've been to in the last few weeks, all the online and in-person events have had a hearing element to them, which I think that's going to be increasingly a hot topic. Well, thank you both for joining us. For anybody who's new to the salon, let me just explain how this works. Essentially, Russell and Dorothy have been given a very thin brief by me, which essentially says, interpret this topic however you like and talk for 10 minutes. So I've no idea what they're going to say, but I do know that they spoke with each other beforehand, which not everybody has done. But so far I've gotten lucky, and there hasn't been two talks that were identical, so we've got lucky. So each of them will present for 10 minutes. We'll have a little bit of chat. I'll ask them some questions, and then assuming that we have enough of an audience, what we're going to do is we're going to move into the chat space with you at the end, where you'll have a chance as well to have a conversation, not just to ask questions, because if you've got questions, you can post those at any time using the chat, the Q&A function, which I've just enabled now. So you can chat between yourselves. You can use the Q&A function, and we'll join you at the end, hopefully to have a more of a conversation and get your experiences on this topic and give you a chance to chat with Dorothy and Russell as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And Russell's going first.
Yep.
So I will turn my, if you'd like to share your screen, Russell, I'll turn my camera and mic off, and we'll let you get on.
Okay.
There we go.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Sweet.
I can see that. Thank you, Russell.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Adam. I'm glad to be here today. Uh, as Adam has said, my name is Russell. I am a postdoc researcher at the Center for Healthy Brain Aging, uh, aka Chiba, over at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, and I'm going to be talking about a couple of points that I had about being a good leader and mentor while doing my best to keep within the allotted time frame. Yeah, and since I am coming to you from Sydney, Australia, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting on, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I also like to pay my respects to all Indigenous leaders, past, present, and emerging. So that's me. You're probably wondering how I got into this situation. Record scratch. So a bit about my background on how I've gotten all the way here. And I've had quite a bit of experience inside and outside of academia. In doing so, I've experienced a couple of different styles of leadership and mentorship. I'll start off with briefly saying that in 2007 to 2009, I was part of the Republic of Singapore Air Force. Singapore is where I'm from. As part of my national service, as you can see by this heavily redacted photo. After that, after I finished my service, I went into psychology and communications. I did a bachelor's of arts and got to do a bit of peer mentoring and stuff like that. It's a picture of me with all my fellow peer mentors during orientation. Back when I had flowy long hair. And from then, after I graduated, I did 5 years at a neurology clinic in Singapore as a research assistant, where I got my first experience in looking at dementia and people with mild cognitive impairments, strokes, Parkinson's, encephalitis, and all sorts of stuff. Um, that's a picture of us in my first ever AIC. No, it's not the first. That's one of the many. Yeah. And then I got a position here in Sydney to do my PhD. That ended in 2022, and I did it, like I mentioned, in social cognition in older adults, and now I'm a postdoc over here at Chiba. So in doing so, I've encountered quite a number of people, number of different leadership and mentorship styles, and I would like to take this opportunity to talk about my experiences and also the experiences of some of my colleagues and friends that I've spoken to about today, about this topic, because I didn't want to just get my um, opinions and feedback. I wanted to get a variety of experiences as well as from both mentors and mentees. So I did speak to a couple of people who have wished to remain anonymous, at least for now, because we wanted to have a frank discussion about what makes a good mentor and also what were their experiences with during the mentorship process that kind of got into the feel it could have been a bit better, right? And I'll be speaking from a capacity as more of a peer mentor, uh, me helping younger, newer PhD students, and also informal mentors, like how new RAs come in, get trained by me, by us, and then we eventually become colleagues and peers. And I think later on, Dorothy can take a bit more time to speak about more formal mentorships and being as a leader of a team. And some of these points will be in italics. There will be questions that I'm raising that we can think about, because mentorship is not a concrete, static thing. It's always something that needs to be redefined and thought about. So maybe at the end of this session, I will raise more questions than I answer, but that's the nature of it, I think. So I'll start by saying that one thing I feel is we need to do as mentors, the most important thing, our goal is that we should be raising our mentees to be the best version of what they want to be. They focus on they, meaning the mentees. We have to recognize that I think our mentees will want different things from what we want for them, and also different things from what we want for ourselves. So it's not about trying to figure out what to make them. It's about asking them what they want to achieve and helping them to achieve that. And the outcome would be their own personal growth, their own professional growth, and eventually independence from us. Right. Our job as mentors are done is when they don't specifically need us anymore. Right. And in doing all these kinds of things, I talk about all this. I would sometimes juxtapose being a mentor from being a boss or academic, that being a more topic focused or task focused role, where with a boss and an employee, the the key is to bring out the best person with the best skill set for the team in general, and the outcomes for the employee boss relationship is to deliver on team deliverables and key performance indicators, whatever the company, the institution needs. So it's more of a team focus and objective focus as opposed to like a mentor mentee, more of like individual focus. And I will talk about mentors and bosses as being like almost opposites, but they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. They're not on a sliding scale. I'm not saying that being a mentor is good and being a boss is bad. In fact, many people who are mentors are also bosses, and they have to wear both hats either simultaneously or one after the other. So it's a juggling thing, right? So talking about helping mentees being the best version of themselves raises the question: what happens if we encounter a mentee who wants to do something that we don't feel is suited for them because they don't have the right skill set or temperament? What do we do? Do we coach them through it? Do we be frank with them? Questions to ask, right? Yeah. Uh, another Some of the points that I spoke about with my colleagues come under the umbrella of teaching and support. And I think one of the most important things for mentors to do that people have mentioned is mentors need to be present and be around for their mentees. And it seems like a bit of an obvious point, I think, and yet it warrants mentioning because so much of what makes mentors not very good is that they're just not around to help people. A bit more absentee, a bit more like, oh, you go figure out your thing, and then you don't see them for a couple of months, which is not what you need. Not what mentees need. Mentees need nurturing in their skills and also nurturing in their ideas. This is, I think, a very academic thing, a very academia thing. We need to help them to workshop ideas, ask questions, because how we ask good questions is we start by asking bad questions, and we need to work with our mentees to say, oh, that's a good idea, or maybe that's not a good idea. However, we can go on this route, and we keep asking why, like, oh, that question's been answered, but uh, why is that? And then keep going one step further and further until we hit the crux of the matter that, oh, that's our topic right there, right? As mentors, we need to believe in and support our mentees. We need to advocate for them because I think a lot of mentees, they aren't able to advocate for themselves, or they don't know how to because they don't know people. They are not in the space yet. They don't have the confidence in themselves yet. So we need to be the ones to say, hey, my guy can do this. Give them a shot. We need to speak up for them because not only does it give them confidence in themselves, it gives them a reassurance that they are doing something good that is an approval of us, by us, in a sense. But also we should be wary of being selectively supportive and not just like helping and supporting people who have potential and neglecting people that seem to be all right on their own. It has to be equitable, which brings me to this dichotomy of help and support versus rewards and opportunities, because we had a bit of differing opinions where sometimes uh, people will say, oh, we need to help people that need help and focus on them more so than others, and other people say, no, that's not the best, because then if people are doing a lot of work and doing well, we're neglecting them and it doesn't seem like we're rewarding them for their hard work. So how we help people and how we reward people has to have a distinction. So how do we cater and support our mentees without excluding our other mentees? It's another question. Which brings me to a point that one of my friends brought up. Was a postdoc at the psych department who mentioned that there's this dichotomy of feed me versus figure it out when it comes to helping our mentees when they want to or need to learn something. Do we feed them? Do we tell them what to do? That's often quick and direct. We just, okay, get this done, bomb. But often spoon feeding them too much might inhibit growth. They might not learn why they have to do what they do. They don't learn the intricacies, and also they might not learn how to learn, which is, I think, more important than anything in academia, because we're always upskilling and we need to learn how to learn new skills. We could let them figure it out and lead them to their own devices to figure things to find a solution on their own, and they might learn better that way. But if we let them flounder too much, they might start drowning, which is not good, and they might do redundant work, reinvent the wheel? Why spend months working on a code that you can just go to GitHub or Stack Overflow and copy it out and plop it, right? So which strategy is appropriate and when are they appropriate if both are is for us to figure out. Um, there's an element of communication and leadership as well. And I think the most important thing we have to remember is that we have to be firm and honest with our mentees, but not dismissive or rude, right? We have to be frank with them, give them criticism, especially negative criticism on how to become better. We have to be upfront with them when things aren't feasible or not going well so that we can readjust when needed. Oh, that doesn't mean that we call them idiot sandwiches and be, overly callous about the whole thing. And we have to match mentees to a communication style that suits them the best, either by picking mentees that suit our communication style or preferably the other way, where we adjust our communication style to fit how they need to take things in. And I think a lot of mentees will appreciate if we lead by example and do work alongside with them so that they know that we are invested in them as they are in themselves. Some people might disagree. So that's the question is, should mentors be in the thick of it, slogging it out with the mentees? Is that a good use of our time, given that we have other responsibilities and other mentees to look at to help, right? So that's another question. We can talk more also about team dynamic and culture, and I think all our mentees, especially if we have multiple mentees, deserve fair and equal attention, not just in opportunities that we give them, which are things we can count, but also in the amount of enthusiasm and respect that we give them. We shouldn't be favoring one mentee over another. And sometimes enthusiasm is a non-measurable thing. It's not like I'll give you 5 enthusiasm and I'll make sure you get 5 as well. It's not measurable, and it's, if we're not careful, it can seem like we're giving preferential treatment to one person over another. And we also have to be wary about pitting, consciously or unconsciously pitting mentees against each other. I've had experience in research settings where RA students, postdocs, they're all doing very similar things, have very similar skills, and because of that, they feel competitive of their own ideas. They feel cagey. They don't feel like they can communicate with each other, and that just fosters an environment where people can't collaborate, and they're not trusting of each other, which is not what you want in academia. We have to learn how to be. We have to foster open communication and collaboration because that's how ideas get passed, skills get swapped, and work gets done. And as mentors, we also have to be approachable, not just through our words, but through our actions as well. I think there are many mentors out there who will be like, you can tell me about anything, right? They'll say frankly, and they believe that, and we'll just like, yeah, yeah, sure. But in our heads, we might think that I'm not going to tell him about that. I'm not going to feel good about that. So, whether or not mentees want to disclose certain things to us remains their decision. But as much as we can, I think we should say and do things to communicate that we are open to being approachable, to being approached, to being asked questions. Which also then leaves ask the question: how personable should this mentorship relationship be? Should we be it's the professional aid, great. Personal aid in terms of helping people overcome stress, anxiety, overcome their personal problems, which can interfere with their work. Is that crossing a line? Is that too much? Is that part and parcel of the job? That is a tricky question, I think. And also, once mentees graduate, they learn what they need to learn and they go on their lives. Does the mentor relationship still continue? Do we still need to keep track of them? Should we still keep track of them? Or is that too coddling, right? That's another question I think we can discuss later on. And the last thing I'll talk about really quickly is the mentor-mentee ratio. How many mentors to how many mentees? I think when we think about mentor-mentee, we think about one person, single mentorship. It's which is less confusing. There's fewer cooks. There's no less confusion, less like contradiction. But more often than not, I think more people tend towards a model of multiple mentorship, where you have one mentor for a certain specific skill each, and then there's more specialization. And in this plurality, there in the multiple mentors you have, at least one of them is something that you're going to be able to approach about something, right? It may or may not be, you may or may not be the mentor that people approach you with certain sensitive things, but at least your mentee is taken care of. At least there's someone there, right? And it would be ideal to have one single mentee where we can focus all our attentions on, but our departments, our institutions may not prefer that because we need to spread our time around. So we should have, more often than not, we'll have multiple mentees, but that means split attention, maybe not following one person close enough, maybe following one person more than the others. So we need to strike a balance. We need to be wary of that. So how many is too many? How many is too many mentors or mentees? That I think is a question that we need to keep asking ourselves and reminding our departments on. So yeah, just a few points that we had to I raised. I brought a workshop with a couple of my friends. We can discuss later on. In the end, mentorship is hard and there's not one correct way. And I think there's a lot of things that we can ask ourselves. And these questions, I think we need to continuously ask ourselves to um, uh, continuously reevaluate our mentor-mentee relationships and continue to evolve so we can be the best that we can for our mentees. And how do we invest in people and prove to our institutions that all this is worth it, especially since we talked about, a lot of mentorship is immeasurable in terms of personal and academic growth. Yep, we have all this to figure out, but yeah, we can discuss more about that later on. So yeah, I'll just wrap up my part now and say thank you for your time. Yep.
Thank you, Russell. I mean, I'm really pleased you pick up on mentorship because I wasn't quite sure where this, where this conversation was going to go and how much I'm mentoring. And I know, I mean, despite my being rather long in the tooth, to coin a UK phrase, particularly, it's only this last kind of couple of years that I've had some mentees, and I don't know about you. I always kind of felt, well, why would anybody want me as a mentor? What do I know? I'm not an academic in the same way that they are. But I've kind of surprised myself, and I think more people actually need. We're definitely short of people. I don't know of people willing to be mentors, and I think maybe that's a little bit of imposter syndrome, or whether it's to do with calling yourself a mentor. Kind of mentors suddenly seem to be somebody you'd put on a pedestal who have to instill to the world, and I never felt like I was that person. And I mean, as it turns out, I'd like to think I've been useful, and I think we can all as individuals do more to recognize that even if you don't think of yourself as a mentor, you could be like a critical friend or an academic buddy. I think don't necessarily think of this term as mentor as being, well, I couldn't do that. I mean, for me, when I looked at what help I could give, it was like, well, I've got quite a big network. I know a lot of people, so if somebody has a problem, I can probably introduce them to somebody who might help them get those skills. Or I know where all the jobs are and who's recruiting and things like that, which can be particularly useful. But I don't know about what advice would you give to somebody who's being a mentor for the first time? Do you think they should go get training on this? Are there resources? Or just are these skills that they just naturally have, do you think?
I think well, aside from the fact that if you do any sort of like official mentorship, like for students, and especially postgrad students, there are definitely courses that your institution will ask you to do first. And I think, like for example, at UNSW, if you want to like supervise anyone, not only do you have to do the courses, but you also have to co-supervise someone with someone who's already been a primary supervisor before. And then once you have that experience under your belt, then can you go on to primary supervise. So I guess mentorship is sort of similar in that way. Whether or not official courses aside, I think speaking to other people who are mentors themselves or your mentors can help you get some insight as to what's required or not. I think, like we mentioned before, and we'll talk about more again, there's a lot about mentorship that's not part of official rule sets and more guidelines and situational things like how to communicate and all that. And I think there's no one course or list of things to tick off that will make you a great mentor. But I think it's worth at least talking to people and getting that kind of experience so that you can at least clear some of that ambiguity a little bit and start from there. And also, I think the most important thing, I think, is to treat every mentor-mentee relationship as a unique individual thing. We don't want to take our experience with one mentee and then apply it to that. Like, oh, I did that before, so this is going to work again, and just keep doing the same thing because everyone's different. Everyone's a
Absolutely.
unique snowflake.
And I think your point about having multiple people for different purposes, clearly, I'm not going to be able to give people advice on how to modify their mouse lines. But if they're looking for their next career stage or what they might do to find something to add to their narrative CV, which of course, being a mentor to students or even to people inside or outside your institution is a great thing now to add to your narrative CV, which we're all being encouraged to look at. But I mean, that's one of the reasons I think why this community has a find a mentor function, which is a very grand term for it. But essentially, if you click on community connect, one of the questions we asked everybody when they sign up is, are you willing to be a mentor? And if you said yes to that, you can go look, find the people who said yes. You can filter according to what country they're in, what research they're field in, what career stage that they're at, and it's automatically enabled messaging, so you can reach out and contact those people. I really didn't want to make it that way because I think that sounds great until you're in that situation of having to type that first message going, hi, I'm looking for a mentor. I think I think this is where official kind of pairing schemes can be particularly useful, aren't they? Because it is a little bit of pressure. What do you think for people, you know, at least in this instance, we know everybody said yes. So you're not contacting some stranger who you don't know if they want to. But I mean, what advice would you give? I mean, you mentioned multiple mentors. How many do you have, Russell?
Mentors?
Putting you on the spot now. How many mentors do you have?
Well, in terms of formal and informal mentors, I mean, I do have one or two formal mentors in terms of like my supervisor and also my previous PhD supervisor who I still talk to every once in a while. Informally, you know, senior colleagues, my old boss, even like to a certain degree, like friends, right? Like it's hard to define an informal mentor in that sense. Like it's because I almost like I was thinking about this, like who I've mentored before, and I have colleagues before who have just come in, and I informal mentorship with them. I teach them how to do stuff, and then they've come up to be my peers, and now they're actually more successful than me. They have their own labs and stuff. So do I call myself a mentor to them in the sense like taking ownership? I don't know, but I have a few, yeah, and uh, uh everyone does serve a certain role. It's almost like a brain trust in that sense, if you're familiar with that concept. Yeah. So yeah,
But
I don't think there's any number.
I completely agree. I mean, and I'm always there. I mean, if anybody who's watching thinks I could in some way be useful to you, then by all means get in touch, drop me a message, because I'm always happy, whether this is on a one-off occasion or over a long period of time. I'm happy to give you half an hour of my time to talk through things, whether that's any use to people or not. What about you, Dorothy? I'm going to bring you in on this conversation. How many mentors do you have?
I was just saying that since like when you mentioned that you have tomorrow you have influx of like emails asking you to be the mentor, right?
I think you're very generous. I don't think I will.
Yeah, so it's so with mentor and mentee, so I echo with like Russell's like point of view, because I think that with mentors that sometimes you ask people like for some specific like advice, like so that it comes and goes. So with mentees, right, I have quite a few, and because I'm also like a mentor at the BNA's like mentee and mentor like program, so that's they have more like an official, you know, like a mentee and mentor program. So that has been running quite well. And in terms of like within the university, so we also have this like personal tutor and tutee system. So that's why like each year I will have like quite a few like students. For example, every year I think about like 10 students. So it continues like yeah. And also I think referring to Russell's point is that after they graduate, they still like act as their mentor. And sometimes I do. So sometimes they will come, you know, we have like a quick chat, and then yeah. So I think that's like a very dynamic like relationship, I would say.
I think Russell had great advice on how to be a good mentor is treat each person as an individual. I'm recapping on what you've already said, but treat each person as an individual. Don't underestimate in the first place your ability to actually to be helpful. I think being able to, I think I certainly, a couple of people I mentor really want me to tell them what to do. I try to avoid that. I do prefer to kind of help, in that kind of psychiatrist's way, where I'm not going to tell you what the problem is. You've got to discover that for yourself. I don't think that's quite the same. I think you can get practical with advice and say, well, if it was me, I would email this person. This is what I would say. And I've offered to, read letters and things before they go out. I think it depends on what that person wants, but don't be afraid to just ask and say, I think I start every mentoring session these days with saying, how can I help? What can I do for you? What do you want from me? How, which puts them on the spot a little bit. Maybe that's not the right way to do it. I have one last question on mentoring, which is because diversity and inclusion is very important these days. And I think people who are in leadership, we're going to move on, I think, to talk more about leadership after Dorothy's talk, but what role do you think mentoring can play in diversity and inclusion? Because I think part of the issue here is that we know that really, I think if you are somebody who might identify as being from a more diverse community, that it's even more important that you step forward and offer mentoring to others, because we know that it's more likely to be encouraged early career researchers if they see people like them in senior positions. Yeah, have I answered my own question there?
No. to a certain degree. Well, yeah, I do feel like yes. Well, it's quite grand for us to say that if you are from a diverse community, you have even more of an onus or responsibility.
Yeah, I suppose.
It is sort of true. I think especially if we want to foster more mentees and more academics in the space who are from diverse backgrounds, we need to have mentors from those backgrounds or similar backgrounds where they are the exemplars, and almost like they're the most visual thing to the mentees to show that, oh, someone like me can make it in this field. And
yeah, you're right.
That's why we have all these
right.
women in STEM spaces and stuff like that. If you are not from a diverse background, I think you can also do your part to be a centered ally and raise awareness to your mentees that diversity and inclusion is important, and it's possible to bring all these kinds of people in the space. And even if you're not from those, your mentee is not from those backgrounds themselves, I think it's also worth highlighting to them how important it is to actively include people from diverse backgrounds as well.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about being from those backgrounds. But
we had a great session a couple of months ago now on unconscious bias, and I think actually that's me showing unconscious bias there, because the minute you say that, of course you're right, anybody should be able to mentor anybody. I mean, it is important that we do have leaders who are women and people from minority ethnic backgrounds as well, as kind of inspiration for everybody. But you're right. I think everybody should be able to mentor everybody and be open to that as well.
Well, that being said, I will recognize that there are some certain elements of the cultural experience in certain diverse backgrounds that I think other people, if you're not from that background, you can't really speak to it. So
yeah,
you have to be from that space to mentor people in that space, in that specific respect,
Yeah. But again, adds to that point of having multiple people. Anyway, listen, let's get on and allow Dorothy. It's been very patient. Dorothy, I'd love to hear your talk now.
Sure, thanks. Adam, I'm going to just share screen.
I'll stick around until you've done that and check it works.
Yeah. Does that work?
We've got the infinite screen of doom that we had when in our little rehearsal.
Yeah, right. I'm going to share that again and try again.
There's a window.
It's the window and then the PowerPoint slide. It should work. What about now?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Dorothy.
Can I just go to the next slide just to check you can see my next slide?
I can, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Brilliant. That's good. So, hi everyone. My name is Dorothy. I am a memory researcher. I'm also a principal investigator and I've been running my lab for nearly 3 years now. So before I started my own lab, I was based at the University of Edinburgh for nearly 16 years. So I did my master's, PhD, and then multiple postdocs at University of Edinburgh. So just before I became a PI, I was also a lab manager and a senior postdoc. So I have always been really interested, to understanding, the differences between, leaders and managing. So I'm really happy, to be here to share my experience with you all. So to start off with, as principal investigators and lecturers, we often find ourselves, juggling many responsibilities. So here I've got a diagram showing that we've got, ourselves, to look after, and we also have our team. So we've got like our students, interns, like undergraduate postdocs, like postgraduate postdocs, or like lab managers. So you've got like your team, to look after. And with the job-wise, like what I mean here is that we got also our teaching responsibilities and also administrative and management work, like within the university. And also outside the university, you also have involvement, in different committees in different organizations. So for example, myself, I'm affiliated with the British Neuroscience Association, and also as a FAMS CAFLI like scholar, and also with the Liverpool Neuroscience Early Career Researchers Group. So there are lots of organizations like in the neuroscience or dementia researcher like environments that like we have responsibility with. So what I was thinking is that like with like leaders and also like manager and also like mentor, like there's lots of like different roles. So here's another diagram to show that as a leader, we often have to develop like vision. We have to like think like strategically, like communicate like very clearly, and this is what like also Russell mentioned. And sometimes we have to be like a role model, right? Like so that's just like a lot of like leadership zone, and you can see that in the more like an inner like a zone, which is more like a management role, which is like setting goals and making plans. So leader is like setting vision, and then the manager will like actually, bring the team, to that goal. So what I like about, this figure is like this diagram is to show the differences, between leadership and management. So what I would like to focus on today is like to see how could we like achieve like why is it important, to achieve like a vision like with your team, and also like focus on developing like people relationships and the team. So this is what like the two things that I would like to focus on today. So I think like as a leader, it is very important, to set a very clear vision. So it has to be very clear and also like specific, so that the team knows that what you want to do. So for example, let's just say I don't know if anyone like to do hill walking or like climb a mountain. So let's just say this is like horizontal like planning. So as a leader, you would like to set like really clear vision, saying that okay, so this is the mountain that we're going to climb, and for example, we're going to start from like somewhere, and how do you get there? So this like things need to be very clear. And also this is important, once you set this like really clear vision, so that you invite your team, to contribute. And this is like dynamic too. It's not like, oh, something that you set as a stone as vision, then like nobody can change. It's there you leave some rooms, for your team like to improve or to to change that. So but I think that this is like the first key things, like setting the vision is very important as a leader. So then the second theme is like as a leader, I think it's important is to develop like people relationship and team. So not only support that like professional growth. So as a like you say a team like leader, of course I would like my team to flourish in science, it's not only that, it's also the personal growth. And later on, I will show you some examples what I mean by that. The other point is that also to create an inclusive and supportive environment where the team member feels comfortable to share their views, and also they can contribute and be able to take risk and be innovative. So, and that's like applies for, you know, from undergraduates, interns, postgraduate, postdoc, research assistant, etc. So I thought that maybe it's good to give you all like some examples. So there are different like students and people in my lab. So one student is Sarah. So Sarah was is an undergraduate, and I met Sarah when she was doing her year one study. She's a psychology student, and she is my personal tutor. So in UK we have the systems that is that I'm a personal tutor, and I will as a mentor, and also like giving like pastoral advice, you know, to students. So usually it's like maybe one mentor, like you'll have like maybe at least like 10 like mentee in that year. So it was actually by year you'll increase, you'll have more mentees. So what Sarah, when I first started off to chat with Sarah, and of course she's interested in psychology, and when I asked her like what kind of like work in the future she would want to pursue, and she mentioned that she would like to go into like digital marketing, and that was back in like year one. So I thought, wow, this is like quite interesting, because I mean, she's studying psychology and she also have like interest in digital marketing. However, back then she didn't have any experience in digital marketing. And then I discussed with her for a few more sessions, and then I thought, okay, maybe you can do like an internship, you know, in my lab. And so what we did was that, like in year two, Sarah like did an internship in my lab, but instead of like doing a pure research stuff, she becomes my digital marketing manager. So she rebrands like the Cell Lab website. So it was great because she was interested in doing like digital marketing. However, she didn't have the experience, and I thought, oh, I have like an opportunity, so you can try. And also for me, it's a new like it's a bit of like taking risk, but this is a risk that like I'm happy, you know, for Sarah, you know, we do it together. So we have like our weekly meeting, so just me and her, and also we have like our normal lab meeting, so that's like a group meeting, but we have like a weekly meeting, and just to focus, you know, on this project. So it was great. So we she did like my website, which is brilliant. She rebranded, and she also, and afterwards she also work on like different website, which is projects that I am leading. And for example, like this project, like yesterday. So this is a co-creation with another organizations, like with U3A. So again, this is like creating like opportunities, you know, for people around you. I think that's important, and Sarah really enjoyed it, which is great. And now with Sarah, she's doing a dissertation in my lab. So it has been great, you know, working with her. And with the dissertation project is on like a human schema, like a memory task, which using VR. So it's different than, you know, what she was doing as an intern. But I feel like it's really good that like during her internship she could try something that she's passionate about, which is digital marketing. And then now she would like to, you know, pursue, you know, further research in memory. So I think this is I think it's a really great way, you know, to show that, you know, sometimes I think develop like people relationship and teams takes time. So it takes about like 2 years, you know, for us, and I think it's like a journey that, you know, we walk together. So this is one of the example. And the other example that I would like to show is like Christina. So Christina, she's now currently a PhD student. And when I first met Christina, I hired her as a research assistant. So she finished her master's from a different university, and back then she wasn't sure what she would like to do in research, but she has an interest, as a research assistant. So back then I got a project, is Aging Better with an Active Mind. Again, this is a co-creation project with U3A. The idea is to promote like healthy aging. So Christina's role was to organize some workshops, and it was a series of workshops, from dementia, memory, physical activity, emotional. How does that, promote like healthy aging? So Christina did really well. So she organized like a series of workshops within that year. And at the end, she also run like a showcase, which we have about 200 people. So there are lots of like organization skills, in this project, and that Christina developed. So, and it's also great that working with different organizations, because then it helps her actually to apply for a PhD, and she got the funding, for a PhD. So I think that during that research assistant year, like Christina developed a lot of like amazing skills that actually helps her, for both research and perhaps in the future if she doesn't, continue in academia. So I think there are still lots of skills that, she developed, from those projects, until now. So yeah, so now she's like working as like a PhD student, and she's the lead in the human like memory studies. And again, because she had like experience working with elderly people, so now when she recruits like participants, it is slightly relative like easier, because she had the skills like communication skills and also organization skills. And I think that it helps her a lot, with working on the project. And also she's engaged with other public engagement activities. So we've also got like a Minecraft project. So I think it's great that there is opportunity that we can work with like the mentees or your team, together. And I think back to one like point that Brussels mentioned, it's like different, team members and different like mentees. They're all very unique and different. So I think it's important, to work with them and take a bit of time to see that what the actual interests are, and then you help them to develop that. So I think I can show you some examples maybe within the teams, and I think it's really important also, not just looking within the team. Oh, this is one of the pictures showing that like we have like a team building like activities, like which I think is important, and so make sure that it's not just science you talk about, you also talk about other things. What I would like to mention is that apart from your own team, I think it would be good, to contribute, to a bigger network. So, for example, this network, with Adam created, which is great, with the Dementia Researcher, and also involved in creating like the early career researcher group in Liverpool Neuroscience. So, when I'm creating this group, the idea is also to help other maybe young PIs or other like earlier career researchers to set up like a network, so that when, let's just say, if you need maybe some suggestions or advice, for like a certain project or like some data analysis or like, career wise, so that like you've got like a support group, and that could be like a peer, like a mentor-mentee relationship. So like people give you, some advice for that specific like a topic or theme. So I think that it's important, to develop teams and also organizations, and so that you have a support group, to go to. So I think to conclude is that I do value a lot, as a leader and also a mentor, to set really clear vision in the beginning, and also take time to develop, people relationships, because it's worth it. Yeah, so thanks for listening. I'm going to stop sharing here.
Thank you, Dorothy. Just a reminder to anybody who's watching, if you have a question for Dorothy or Russell or me, do pop them in the. We have there's a new feature on the community, which is this Q&A section. It also allows you to ask questions anonymously. So feel free to do that. I'm going to go in. I'm going to fire off some quick fire questions now because I'm conscious of time. So I'm going to throw in some quick fire questions. What qualities or actions do you think make a research leader truly stand out, Dorothy?
What qualities?
What actions kind of make for a good leader?
I think it's be there for your people, be around like for your people. That's for me, I would take that as the first thing.
I completely agree. The number of people I know who complain that their PIs particularly are just absent, and they pass along their responsibilities to the kind of more senior postdocs, and they're just not around, is a key red flag, I think, that comes up increasingly. And you know the people are around because you know that they're the good leaders, because they're the ones that everybody wants to work for, aren't they? They're the people like yourself, and I'm going to talk people in the UK that always get flagged as running really great labs are people like Sarah Marzi and Selena Ray, and there are lots of great examples. The two that immediately jump to mind, who I know every time they recruit, everybody wants to work for them. And I think also as well, you pick this up because they often talk far more about what their team are doing rather than what they are doing. And I don't know if I don't know if you'd agree, if is there a flipping point where that happens? So we did a podcast series 18 months ago now, or maybe even longer, called Ask Your Mentor, where mentees interviewed their mentors about their careers. And so many of them said, like, what really excites you now about your work? And very few of them said it was the science anymore. It wasn't the research anymore. They'd kind of had 30 years of doing research and discovery and many years of that. And what actually excited them, though, was seeing their PhD students finish, seeing their teams get grants. I don't know. Have you reached that point yet? Have you reached that point?
I think when I thinking about this, like this discussion, I was like thinking, and I did a lot of reflection, and it makes me happy that when I know my students, like just say after they graduate, is that it's not necessarily they have to be in research. It's also like they develop what they really like, their passion to do after, what's going on with their degree. So I think this is one thing that I'm really happy for them. And I think the other thing is that during their studies, like to say if you're undergraduate or like PhD student, it's not just pure develop like what's going on in science. It's also like other skills or other passions that you really want to pursue. The reason that I make an example like from like Sarah and also Christina is because I think that they develop something which is not necessarily like the usual traditional route, like, because I would not have thought that an internship could be like with a digital marketing like project. This is not like what I thought previously, but now I think that there's opened a lot of like doors, and like when students like actually or postdocs have an interest like in things that you could create opportunities, I think it'd be good to give them the room.
I could not agree more. I think the way our education system is structured forces you to decide so early on what you want to specialize in, that by the time so many of those young people, I don't want to assume young people, but by the time people reach you to do a PhD, by that time, science has been what they've thought about mostly for a number of years. And also as well, if they've gone straight from A levels in the UK to undergrad to a master's to a PhD, having some space to experience other areas of discovery, other parts. I mean, they might have had other jobs, but I think that can be often a little bit missing, which is a shame. Which is why I really kind of like the idea now. I hope more of funders and things really do push hard to get that narrative CV in there, so you can paint a picture and be encouraged to broaden your interests. You know, presenting or doing stuff like volunteering with the British Neuroscience Association, or you know, with charities and other groups as well. Although I might take slight issue with your about other careers. I always, for like you, for a long time, we've done sessions and we've published blogs and podcasts about how a PhD is really just another qualification, and how the skills you learn in that, you know, project management, people management, presenting skills, writing grants, are all skills that you can employ in industry or in business or in other ways. But then we lose them to science. You know, dementia research really kind of needs more researchers. So whilst I agree we should support individuals to find their passion, I think we should also do our absolute best to make this a good career so they want to stay. Because it feels a shame to spend so many. I don't know how do you feel, do you think, when you have somebody who's great at science, they finish their PhD, and then they say, oh, by the way, I'm going to go work in finance now because I've got these really good stats skills, and I'm going to go work for an insurance company. I'd find that quite, I mean, it's great, hard. Good for you, but also, oh no.
It's very hard. It's very hard, and especially if those people they got the skills that train, you know, to do certain, like, you know, use like certain equipment, or like they have the skills, like, you know, and I found it super hard, like, in that situation, like, but I think what I'm trying to say is that I think research is, I think you need people that genuinely enjoy it. Like, to do that.
Oh, you do. You don't want to keep people who hate their job. I mean, God. But what we could possibly do is find other ways to maybe use that skill, as you say, but somehow keep it in a related way, or make kind of get more dynamic in defining what a job is. I think we're a little bit, you know, right. This is what a postdoc job looks like. If we can look at careers more holistically to make jobs a little bit more interesting, and of course make them permanent contracts, which is, we know, one of the big reasons why people will leave. Sorry, I'm doing when I said quick questions and then I've immediately ruined that. Next question: how can leaders effectively balance that kind of push for scientific excellence, but at the same time supporting well-being? How do you tackle that?
Do you want me to have a go first, Russell? Yes, that's a very good question. I think it's back to the point that I think how much risk do you want to take, right? So again, I think my quick answer would be set a really clear vision and goals, what you want to achieve, and then like make sure, you know, if let's just say if you want like the student, you know, to help with this project, you know, set a really clear goals and see that what they can achieve. And in the very beginning, set really clear, like kind of settings, just to ask them what do they know, and also just like chat, you know, what they actually know, and give the support and give rooms for them, because nobody can do it in one go. So you need leave a little bit like a time, you know, for them to learn things. I think that's important. So it's also linked with like time management. Yeah. It's like
which you're very good at, and you've written blog for us on, which everybody should go read. Next question. What I've already asked that one. How do you think, question for you then, Russell, how do you think we should measure leadership success? Is it about publications, or is it about, what should it be? How should we measure team success?
I think it has to be a combination of these measurable and non-tangible outcomes. We definitely need measurable outcomes so that we can track progress. So things like publications, number of students that graduate, that kind of stuff, sure. those are the kinds of things that we can put on in an Excel sheet and show our departments and say, hey, we're doing a good job. It's hard. It's hard. I think the harder question is like, what kind of immeasurable outcomes we need. Like, for example, how many former mentees or former students, former staff go on to continue their career in research, or how many of them, especially how many of them continue their collaborations and their connections with you. I think that's a pretty big one as well, because I know quite a number of people who, once they're done with their, for example, their PhD, like, okay, that's it, I'm dusted, I don't want to talk to these people again, kind of thing, you know. So I think that's yeah, it's there's many other immeasurable outcomes, but yeah.
I completely agree. In fact, actually, that's one of Alzheimer's Society in the UK. They've removed many of their success, what they defined as success factors now. And I was at their new doctoral training centre launch program for their 3 new doctoral training centres. And their only measure of success is, what do those PhD students do next? Is because again, they're kind of about retaining them in science. And I can kind of see that. I do also think we could be better at qualitative measurement in this way, couldn't we? I know from ourselves, every year when I have to do our annual report, I can churn out lots of statistics to say, hey, this many people joined our webinars, or this many people joined the community, this many people read our blogs. But that doesn't say whether it was actually helpful or not. I've been always keen to capture the story, those kind of little snippets of stories when you've discovered that 2 people came together from something we did and something came from that. Or, you know, I think we could be better at that in our teams, in kind of more qualitatively measuring them. We need to bring in some careers people. There's probably some experts in that. I'm going to jump through my questions now to the last couple, because we're already over time. I'm going to ask 2 last questions. What, both of you can answer this. What one specific practice or habit do you feel makes you a better leader or mentor? Dorothy, you go first. One particular specific practice or a habit that makes you a good leader or mentor.
I would say I think I'll rephrase that answer of like, think of what do I think works. Maybe that way is better. I think for me, I'm very goal orientated. That's me. And I think it's really important, to set things really clear in the beginning. And I understand that, there are things could change. But what I do like is that, like, when we have meetings, because as PI, we're very busy, like everyone. So I think it's like, set the agenda, what you would like to talk about in the meeting, and then we talk about it. And you also leave some time, for the like students or postdoc, that if there are any things that they haven't brought that up, and for mentor, this is one-to-one because you always have the group meeting. So you really set clear goals and what to do, and then you leave them room to do it. I think that is something, and also you, before the next meeting, they recap what's going on. So I think it's important, to set goals.
And what about you, Russell?
So remind me again. It's like what quality?
Sorry, I'll ask that question again. Yeah, what one specific practice or habit do you feel makes you a better leader or mentor?
Right. I think for me, I pride a lot. I put a lot of emphasis on active and dynamic communication. I think that really helps to, the reminder that the relationship and the communication process is always dynamic, changing. It's never set in stone. There's always a need to check in with your mentee to see how they're going, to see if their situation or their motivation has changed, to see what could be better or worse. Things like, communication even goes down to matching your style to to help them out with certain things like teaching. Like, certain people respond in more analogies and certain people respond in more like step by step teaching styles. So I think be able to adapt that to suit your mentees and the people that you're working with certainly does help. So yeah, that active communication and that knowledge that things aren't always set in stone and you have to keep reassessing.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, it sounds obvious, doesn't it? But I think being generous with your time, I think particularly, and truly listening to people as well when they kind of. We had a great blog on this recently where, when somebody says, "Oh, I don't want to do something," and you kind of force them to do it anyway, saying, "Well, trying to understand why somebody doesn't want to present at the lab meeting," or, really listening and understanding and being generous with your time, I think are really important.
Yeah.
And very last question. What are your... Oh, wait. That should have been my last question, because my next question is not a good last question. Last top tip. Just give me one top tip. What's the one thing that you learned from somebody that's led you before, or from your previous bosses that you've learned from? And it can't be the same one we've just had, because I know that's basically a variation on the same question I just asked already. Go on, Dorothy, you go first.
I think be kind and understanding to your team.
Being kind is important, isn't it? I think, being kind doesn't mean that people won't respect you, or that that you're in some way soft. I think you can be kind at the best of times. I think the best leaders are kind. What about you, Russell?
The best advice that a mentor has given me? Or?
Yeah, go for it.
I think a lot about one of my mentors that I worked with in this lab who helped me with data management and stuff, who's now gone to work somewhere else and we're actually good friends. The first meeting I had with him, I kind of didn't have my head around my project. I was kind of a bit muddled, and I'm like, I didn't want to be demanding and going into a meeting. So I was like, so what are we here for again? Kind of thing. It was kind of wishy. I was kind of wishy-washy about it, and he looked at me. He's like, if you don't understand what we're doing here because this is your project, then we're kind of screwed. So he reminded me of like, oh, if it's your thing, you always need to be invested and knowledgeable, at least in your intentions and your plan, right? And not surely, of course, when you do work, when you work with various collaborators, mentors, mentees, whatever, there's always going to be some outsourcing of ideas and skill sets and whatnot. But if it's your baby, you're going to have your overarching view of the whole thing, and that's your responsibility. Yeah.
Well, I've been taking some notes during our chat, and or my AI assistant has been taking notes, and I've come back with these are the top 10 takeaways from Dorothy and Russell. Hopefully they both agree. So to be a great leader or mentor, first of all, we recommend that you listen actively to really understand the people that you're leading or mentoring. Communicate clearly and openly, and make sure everybody understands what they're doing, where you're coming from, what you want from people. Lead by example in all your actions. I think you definitely can't be somebody who turns up at 10 o'clock every morning and then complains if people do the same, or you can't be the person that always takes 2 weeks to reply to papers and then expects everybody else to do that in 2 minutes. So if you can still get in the lab, if you can still go out and do things, you should. Show empathy and understanding. Back to Dorothy's suggestion on being kind. Set clear and achievable goals. Encourage feedback and new ideas as well. Really do allow people to kind of come to that. I meet with my boss. Even now, I still will meet my boss for an hour every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, and we have a conversation, and he gives me ideas, and I listen, and he takes mine as well. Stay adaptable to change. Recognize and celebrate achievements, particularly, and that does mean also getting out of the lab. Do tweet as well, or come to the Dementia Researcher community and post in the celebrating achievements. area that we have specifically for that purpose. Bit of a plug in there. Get yourself a mentor, get yourself 2 mentors, get yourself 3 mentors. If you don't want to call them a mentor, call them a good friend, and be a mentor to somebody else as well, because people out there do need you. Manage your time and prioritize wisely, and go and read Dorothy's blog on prioritizing, because it's a great read. Keep learning and growing continuously, because you don't know it all. Even the greatest leaders will tell you that they'll do, and there's, even if it's just go spend an hour looking at TED Talks, I'm constantly inspired by those. Thank you very much to my incredible guests, Dr. Russell Chandler and the unstoppable Dr. Dorothy C. You've been amazing. Dorothy will also be at the BNA Festival, Neuroscience Festival, which we're going to give a plug for in March.
In April,
yes, in Liverpool. So check that out. It's already got a listing on the Dementia Researcher website, which you can do. And we'll be back next Wednesday, I think in the middle of the day this time. And we're going to be talking about music and dementia with 2 great guests whose names Robin Dowland and Emma Broom are going to be here to talk about their work on music and dementia next Wednesday. Thank you very much, both of you, again for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And I'll see you all again.
Bye.
Have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.